Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Command Sergeant Major Retired Dan Elder, an AUSA Senior Fellow.
Good morning. I hope you're able to participate in the Command Sergeant Major Retired Daniel K. Elder Writing Award presentation held yesterday. Professional discourse and writing are a part of the military profession. I'm here to encourage you, officers, non-commissioned officers, soldiers, DA civilians, and anybody else, engage in writing. It adds to our conversation. There are many outlets one can approach to include AUSA's writing program. Take advantage of the Army's Professional Association and expand your thinking and your reach by writing and getting published. For more information, visit AUSA's website at ausa.org/write. I will now turn the microphone over to Lieutenant General Les Smith. Please help me welcome him to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Come on now, it's the last day. Good morning. There we go, you got fired up. I hope you had a lot of fun last night at the Rocket City Bash. We did. Always good to see a lot of people. Welcome to the final day of the Association of the United States Army Global Force Symposium and Exposition. We will begin our first panel discussing outpacing our adversaries and maintaining the technological edge, followed by a keynote by General David Hodney, CG Transformation and Training Command.
Dr. Tom Carrico is the director of the Missile Defense Project and a senior fellow with the Defense and Security Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where he arrived in 2014. His research focuses on national security, missile defense, nuclear deterrence, and public law. In 2010 and 2011, he was an American Political Science Association Congressional Fellow, working with the professional staff of the House Armed Services Committee and the Subcommittee on Strategic Forces on U.S. Strategic Forces Policy, Non-Proliferation, and NATO. Dr. Carrico received his PhD from Claremont Graduate University and his BA from the University of Dallas. Dr. Carrico, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you all. I appreciate General Smith's invitation to be here, and always enjoy working with the AUSA. I'm pleased to kick off our final panel on command and control and counter command and control, and how the U.S. can outpace its adversaries and maintain a technological edge. I'm fond of quoting General Milley when he introduced the new modernization priorities back in 2017. He says, he went through the list of things, and he said, none of this matters if you're dead, and that's why you need air defense. But in a similar sense today, in this world of EW and counter C2, none of this matters if you can't communicate, and that's why you need next generation C2. So to help us explore these topics, we're joined by Mr. Joe Welch, the Executive Director of T2Com and the PAE for CC2, Major General Ryan Janovic, Deputy PAE of CC2, Major General Patrick Ellis, Commanding General of the 4th Infantry Division, and Major General James Bartolomeus, Commanding General of the 25th Infantry Division. We've got a lot to cover today. We're going to start off with some opening statements for folks to talk about their portfolio and their priorities, and then we'll open it up to questions. I've got a lot of questions, and please submit your questions. Those will come up to me, and I'll feed them to the speakers. So, Mr. Welch, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely, Tom. Thanks for moderating, and thanks to the gentleman to my right for being here, and thanks to AUSA. Again, I'm glad to be back on the stage. A couple days ago, I was describing the Army and our journey with the establishment of the PAEs, and I didn't talk really at all about PAE C2 counter C2 because I knew we had this coming up. So I'm real glad to talk about that here today. So really, at its core, the C2 counter C2 mission of the PAE is to enable our forces to see, understand, decide, and act faster than our adversary, and also prevent our adversary from doing the same against us. If you want to look really tangibly at like what is within the construct of the PAE in terms of things you may recognize already, we have 3 former PEOs. Now they are CPEs, Capability Program Executives, that are within the PAE. So I'll mention CPE for C2 Information Network. This is General Shane Taylor largely doing our next-gen C2 effort, which is going to be a big part of our topic here today, from tactical really through enterprise. We have PAE Intel and Spectrum Warfare led by General Kevin Chaney. Many significant programs under this portfolio that you'd recognize on the Intel side: Titan, AIDP, our terrestrial layer system for EW and for SIGINT, aerial ISR, electromagnetic warfare understanding, assured PNT, so many different significant efforts there. And then our third CPE, the Simulation, Training, Test, and Threat, led by General Chris Beeler, that is bringing our next generation constructive capability, CTC modernization, and a lot of other priorities. And then to kind of close out where our investment areas are and where they're led, we have a System Center lead, Ms. Beth Ferry, who is the C5ISR Center Director and oversees all of the Army's science and technology investments that are related to C2 and counter C2. So we've got a significantly well-enabled team to be able to go after these capabilities. And then, of course, I'm joined by our PAE Deputy, General Ryan Janevek, who also is still the COE Commander for Cyber COE and Senior Mission Commander as well, so several jobs there. But I talked the other day about kind of the power of the combination of acquisition leadership and warfighting operational experience in these key areas, working together to manage these PAEs. So you see some of that evidence here, I think, in what we're going to talk about on the panel today. There are really 6 focus areas we have within our strategy writ large, next-gen C2 being top priority, but across all of our investment areas within the PAE. The first is commercial first, which is actually the Pentagon strategy for acquisition as well, and the new transformation strategy. In C2 and counter C2, I'd almost say it's like an extreme version of commercial first. Like if anybody should be doing it well, and as much as possible, it's kind of within this PAE, given the commercial basis of everything that we're looking at. Also, rapid fielding and our ability to tech refresh. And so this gets into a little bit of our financial stewardship of the funding that we have within our portfolio. If we're going to baseline to commercial, we have to be able to refresh the capability that we put out to our force on a commercially relevant timeline as well. We can't have capabilities that are driven commercially on, let's say, a 3 or 5 year tech refresh cycle, but keep them out in the field for 10 years because we simply can't afford to put them out faster. We absolutely have to solve that problem. We're focused on enabling the joint force, not really through adherence to a set of standards. Standards are important, but also there's a lot of things we need to connect together that maybe there wasn't a standard for. So it's really a matter of a philosophy of modular open systems, well-defined interfaces, software development environments that anybody can build into, so that we can make all the connections that are necessary to enable our joint force and our partner forces. We're focused on merging our tactical and enterprise environments. I think, especially when we get down to our division commanders here, kind of they can give examples of what used to be kind of known as like tactical domain data, and then enterprise operational logistics is probably a good example where these have lived in separate worlds. That's the way we built them over time. There's really no technical reason it needs to be that way, and we're kind of driving down that barrier as one of our focuses. Similar thing with training and operations. I'm really glad that we've got all of the training simulation capability in our portfolio, because the more we can make that the exact same systems that our troops are using in their operations when it comes to C2 and the various domains of that, I think it's going to make us more effective and more efficient. And then finally, really the cornerstone of our approach with industry in this portfolio is the notion of a self-teaming arrangement. In other words, we tell you the problems that we're looking to solve. We're not telling you how to build boxes or how to build software, and you come to us and tell us what you think the solutions are. What we've seen the most powerful of those are when you're able to self-organize and come with your own unique elements of how you would solve that problem, but you've already done the work of how you would do that together. Making us the integrator is never a great idea. We can see one-off solutions that look really appealing, and then we have a lot of work ahead of us to figure out how to put it together. You can do that much more effectively, and so we would just continue to encourage you to do that. So look forward to your questions. Thank you.
General Janovic, over to you.
Well, good morning. My name is Ryan Janovic. Joe did a nice job of positioning my role as his deputy and the role as the Center of Excellence, the Cyber Center of Excellence. I'd also like to position myself here in smart between the operational force and the PAE force. And I think that is a nice visual reminder of the power of that combination that we've made in the new portfolio acquisition executive construct. There are other COE, Center of Excellence, CGs here or throughout the week, and I think we would all agree that we have a unique now ability to not only work on the requirements side or the capabilities development side for acquisition, but to think about what it means for all of the .mil PF, which is a construct that we've for many years worked, but now it's being worked much more cohesively, and we'll prove that through increased outcomes. So we're in contact with these forces as these two gentlemen talk about what they're doing in each of their divisions with experimentation. We have folks in contact with each of those experiments, learning what's going on, taking that feedback, and building it not only back into the capability, but also in terms of the rest of our organization, our leader development, and fundamentally our training. At Fort Gordon, we train all the future signaleers of our Army, all the future cyber operators, which includes in our definition electromagnetic spectrum operations. You'll hear talk about all of those professionals, the work that they're doing in next-gen C2 and electromagnetic warfare, and so we look forward to talking about that. The last thing I'd say is that currently right now I'm focused on behalf of the portfolio with urging through what we're calling long title, Electromagnetic Spectrum Operations Characteristic of Needs Statement. And this is an organizing principle that says, here's how we're going to architect the theory of our success for what we need across EMSO, electromagnetic warfare. And so that document has gone out. We were working it. We think we're going to get this approved, but it's going to mirror what you saw and witnessed happen in the next-gen C2 construct, and we're going to set the overarching premise for what we're trying to achieve and the technologies and the capabilities that we are aiming for and the outcomes on the battlefield we expect and need, and then work the subsequent documentation that allows us to find ways to solve those problems. And so as we do that, I've really benefited from the feedback received today. Look forward to talking about it more with you during this panel or throughout the rest of the afternoon. So thank you very much.
Great. John Ellis.
Hey, good morning. I'm Major General Patrick Ellis. I command the 4th Infantry Division, and we're one of the 2 prototype divisions the Army's selected to work on the next generation command and control concept. So first, to kind of talk a little bit about experimentation versus prototyping, I think that's an important distinction to make. Is we do some experimentation inside of the prototyping effort, but I think experimentation in a lot of cases is, should we do this, yes or no? You work through the experiment and figure that out. Prototyping is, we're going to do this, how do we figure it out? And that's the approach that we're taking in the 4th Infantry Division, and I know that my brother in the 25th is doing the same approach, which is, hey, we're going to figure this out for the Army. Basically, to catch you up to where we are in the movie, PCC-5 happened this time last year. It was in March of last year. At that point, the Army did a proof of concept for next generation command and control. There were about 8 apps. There were about 8 edge nodes. It was a battalion that had been outfitted with some of the new communications technology, with a brigade headquarters on top of them, a division headquarters on top of them, and a corps headquarters. Where we are today is we just finished 2 weeks ago in the 4th Infantry Division, we finished IB Sting 5, and I'll talk about those in a second. That was 78 edge nodes, that was the entire division headquarters, that was the Divardi headquarters, that was 2 brigade headquarters, and a bunch of their down trace units all in the field. So we've already scaled and scoped at a pace that I haven't seen in my 30 years in the Army, where we've gone from, hey, proof of concept with 1 battalion to most of a division equipped less than a year later. So the IB Sting series is something we approach this with, is how do we go fast with industry? How do we go fast with our partners from the acquisition community to build out these capabilities? We realized that talking about it, admiring the problem, and doing one prep event in 6 months and then coming back 6 months later wasn't going to do that. So the approach we took, which is we started actually with an IB Sting 0, which is just academics, like this is what NGC2 could be. This is the whole stack approach. This is the different layers. That was really in June for us. And then every other month did a pretty significant event for us where we scheduled these IB Sting series, and they just have grown in size, scope, and complexity. I don't think that is the takeaway. It's not about how big you get, how fast. I think it's a little bit more about how much more capable we got, how much more quickly. So we were able to do every other month, and it kind of became part of our battle rhythm. Is we go to the field, we run these events. They started in the garrison environment, and then for IB Sting 5, which we just finished, it was a 2-week-long event where we had folks scattered all across the installation conducting distributed command and control operations. That was kind of our last big prep event. And then in May here, we're going to roll into something called IB Mass, which is we are literally going to have an armor brigade fight all the way through Fort Carson, open up a hole, and then run the Stryker Brigade all the way through that hole at Fort Carson and drive down to Pinyon Canyon about 150 miles, and then fight down there at Pinyon Canyon, one of our training areas there in southern Colorado. For us, that's really going to expand the scope, scale, and size and complexity of where we're going. And we're excited because I think that will be the key lead in. We're going to learn a lot. And then what that's going to do is that's going to take us to the National Training Center here in July for Project Capstone Convergence 6, where we're really going to validate the prototype and help the Army make decisions about where it's going in the future.
Great. General Bartholomew's.
Great. Major General Jay Bartholomew's commander of the 25th Infantry Division. Our infantry brigades have been transforming into mobile brigades for the last few years with enablement of electronic warfare, UAS, and counter-UAS capabilities specifically designed for the Pacific fight. And so coming on as the 2nd Division for Next Generation C2 was a natural fit for us, as we've been working closely with industry in those portfolios. And so we were fortunate also to be a C2 fix organization, highly enabled with a Paleo architecture. So we had a good leap-off point in order to help inform the Army on how we could scale, as General Ellis mentioned, how we could scale very quickly, much like other divisions like us, like the 82nd, the 101st, 10th Mountain, that have been enabled with integrated tactical network and other systems over years. And so we've taken a software-first approach in which we are working towards a common data layer to enable pulling in all the sensor data that we're getting. As we've had a proliferation of those electronic warfare, UAS, and counter-UAS sensors, as well as a host of different competitions that we've been fortunate to pull in different industry partners, and they deliver sensors that we can then pull in. And we've really been learning a lot, particularly in the electronic warfare realm, and our partnership with the Cyber Center of Excellence has been hugely important, so we can help inform the Army on this proliferation of sensors, almost the democratization of electronic warfare, and how we need to harness that so that we can speed our targeting faster at scale. This combined with our fielding of the 1st HIMARS Battalion to an Infantry Division and our experimental launched effects unit that we've stood up within our Divardi, all is forcing us to see, sense, and act faster. And we've been doing it we've taken a similar methodology to the 4th Infantry Division with our Lightning Surge series, started a little bit later this past fall. Focused predominantly around our division artillery, and within the Lightning Surge series, our next one will be taking it into the Philippines. We exercise in the Hawaiian Islands across the archipelago so that we can then project those forces into the 1st Island chain within the Philippines, executing our portion, land portion, of the National Defense Strategy focused on a defense by denial in the 1st Island chain. And so our next Lightning Surge 3 series will be in conjunction with Philippines joint and combined exercises in which we'll be able to put all of this together and really test out the concepts that Next Gen C2 are delivering.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Let me start pretty high. One thing that I like to do is go back and look at old strategy documents from 20 years ago and 30 years ago and compare them to the ones we have today. And there's often a lot of commonality in terms of the vision of network centric or something like that. I want to give you a quote from Secretary of the Army, who talked about a soldier starting and ending their day with the 21st century, but during the day with their tactical communication systems, it feels like they're stepping back to the 1990s. And so to my point there is, why has it taken so long? What has been the source of the inertia to modernize these things, and what is the genesis of that difficulty of overcoming those old systems?
Yeah, Tom, I think there's a myriad of reasons. The good thing is that we are actually in control of all of those for the most part, and we've recognized where those challenges have been, and we have worked diligently to overcome them. For one, I think something that we have tended to do in the past when it comes to this domain is making ourselves a unique customer. So in other words, we may see what commercial technology may be capable of doing, but we kind of over-specify the detail and how it should be built for the U.S. Army. And industry is primed to respond to our requirements, not to kind of push back on them. That's not behavior that's necessarily been rewarded in the past. And so we kind of get what we ask for. And so I think our, first and foremost, our approach to problem-centered requirement documentation is a tremendous change. Like the requirement document from the level of like the Chief of Staff of the Army and from General Hodney's level within T2Com, it's 4 pages long. We have an enormous amount of latitude to work against that problem statement that's been endorsed by our Army leaders in working with industry to pursue solutions. So I think that's a big part of it. There's some other things too, well-intentioned, but for example, like focusing on backward compatibility. It makes sense, but it's not necessarily our actual requirement. Like we need to retain the ability to fight tonight, and we also need to continue to retain that ability into our future capabilities that we're providing. There are other ways to overcome that, but again, it kind of goes back to how we require things. And then frankly, just too many layers in the process when you look from concept to requirement to the development of a specification to pre-solicitation activities, market research with industry, how long it takes to award the contract, and then to start developing a system, go into a test and evaluation timeline, preliminary design reviews, critical design reviews, all of it. And all this takes place while technology is continuing to evolve, and also while we're not really spending any time with our actual customer, the soldiers that are going to operate and have to use this equipment. So I think if you look at what we've done with Next Gen C2, we've kind of like resolved a lot of those things that I think caused us to be in the state that the Secretary described back last October. And I think, the proof's kind of in the pudding in terms of how fast we've been able to move under the model that we're in now. So I think we're very much catching up and overcoming those historic challenges.
I want to let the other folks address this as well, but could you speak, first of all, Mr. Welch, to especially the contracting side of that in terms of overcoming the sort of slowness on that front?
Yeah, there are a lot of elements that go into, from what, something that we know we intend to contract for until the contract or the agreement is inked. And historically, there's a lot of sequential review processes that take as long as they take. So peer review, which is kind of like a head check to make sure that the contract the solicitation is well written. Legal reviews, these things are all helpful to have as we're looking through how we do things, but when you just stretch them together in a serial sequence, they were just taking an inordinate amount of time. The dialogue with industry being more paper-based instead of more kind of like dialogue. Proposals coming in as written forms instead of in oral presentations, or even better, or like demonstrations of capability. If we're really commercial first, why are we reading a proposal about what a company can do instead of looking at what those capabilities really are? I think, all of that really contributes to it. And then I know there's been talk at the panels this week about enterprise agreements or enterprise contracts. the efficiency that we're gaining when we're buying commercial products. We may have multiple different program offices within ASALT as well as within the enterprise of the Army and the institutional systems, all buying similar or the exact same commercial products. And we might have dozens of program offices that are putting contracts and agreements together to buy the same thing. So we may be paying different amounts. We're certainly wasting a lot of time in the overhead and maintenance of having different sets of government teams all doing the same thing. So we're gaining a ton of efficiency through what we're doing in enterprise contracts, and also being able to reinvest that savings into what we're really trying to do, which is deliver capability as fast as we can to our troops.
Gentlemen, you want to speak to kind of what you've seen over your career in terms of the source of the challenge here?
So from our perspective, I think it was the partnership with industry. We used to do these soldier touch points, right, where they'd roll out, somebody would write a requirements document. The ones that I was looking at for C2, last year were 50 pages long with 50 pages of annexes. And they would build the thing the industry would build the thing that they thought we wanted, and we'd do a soldier touch point for a week, and then we'd back away from it. What I think is really valuable in the 4th Infantry Division is we are the soldier touch point in a lot of cases. In this case, like, these folks have been with us since September, and we've been working this together, and the soldiers are the customer, but they're also the consumer, if that makes sense. They're the ones that are going to use the tools that they're helping develop. I've never seen it this way. I had a Sergeant First Class tell the Secretary of the Army, I guess 2 months ago now, where he said, "This is the first time in my career as a fire support specialist I've ever felt heard." He's talking to the vendor that's working on the code, that's building out the software that he's going to use, and he's heard, and he's excited about being able to inform how that's going to be developed. The second side of that is they'll tell you they feel a sacred obligation to get this right for the Army. We want to make sure that it's right because they know that their children may be using the same software. Hopefully not, but we feel in a lot of cases they may be using it. So I think that's pretty valuable. Something else we've started doing that I think has been helpful for us is, in between those Sting events that I talked about, we also host a solution summit, which is really kind of just a deliberate thinking event where we bring everybody in and say, let's talk about this problem. Some folks are on the contract, some folks are not. We just talk about, hey, look, we've done airspace management, we've done chat functionality, we've done maps, we've had a lot of these challenges that we're seeing, and then just let everybody kind of talk about it and kind of hear where the industry partners would go in that space. We bring in our acquisition teammates. Those are proven to be pretty valuable, and actually that's another mechanism. We've found some folks that we weren't tracking in that exact same way, and they get to talk to the soldiers, so everybody benefits from it because they get to hear what the soldiers want. That's been very, very powerful for us. And it's not an acquisition pipeline thing. It's actually just us talking about a problem, and industry is very willing to participate.
That's a great story about the soldiers saying, this is the first time I've been heard. Just maybe give it a little more context of how that could be replicated, and what are the ingredients and the context of putting industry and soldiers together. Like, how can other folks replicate that, and what does industry need to know on that?
Yeah, I would say, as we've been working through receipt of drones, counter drones, electronic warfare, new mobility, the key ingredient here is commanders' comfort level with integrating this into planned training events, and then not being afraid to fail. We talk about this with Mission Command and empowering leaders, but really philosophically, we have to inculcate a culture within all our MOSs to innovate, to look at how to do things better, faster, but in the same challenging environments at the appropriate echelon level for training. And I think that's a philosophical change, as many of our experience has been previous of the soldier touch point, where it appears to be a distraction as opposed to, this is an enhancing capability that's going to help me to kill the enemy faster, it's going to help me to be more lethal. All of those it's a mindset change that is welcomed by our soldiers and leaders, but we as senior leaders have to be willing to ensure that that's planned in our training management planning, because we have missions that we have to move towards to accomplish.
I'd also say that you've got me quoted somewhere, I think, where I said, we'll take a 60% solution and work on the last 40% with you. I mean, I said that probably 6-7 months ago. I'm actually changed my thinking. We'll go 40%. We don't want the product to be perfect. The soldiers actually want to be active participants in the development process. And I don't think you could do that everywhere, but I think you could focus. I've talked to Jay and said, look, we're working on the fire side. Let us work this. We've got an airspace piece. They let us work on this. His guys are working a lot more on the electromagnetic and EW space, which is really useful. So we're learning from each other that way, and kind of saying, hey, look, we're self-organizing, just like industry's doing. We're self-organizing to say, look, I think we've got a solution here that works. Because the soldiers really want to participate in the process. Before an engineering release drops on the fire system, we do a 2-hour phone call the week before. a Teams meeting. The 1 hour is the software developers talking to the fire support specialists about what it is they've done. The second hour is the fire support specialist giving them feedback, saying, hey, these are the changes we want you to make. They make the changes over the weekend and then drop the engineering release. That's how we're going fast.
I would add to that, if you look at what's happening in each of those divisions, when I go look at the soldiers, this fire support specialist is a great example. They are in learning laboratories, and they're learning at a rate that we need to emulate and change in the institutional training that we provide. And so you've asked, what's a major shift? Well, this has huge implications for how we're training, how agile that training is. And Pat talked about being happy, and Jay talked about being confident with failing or imperfections in the education. We need to do that as well. We can't wait for a proven 2-year model to train something that's evolving at a rate that would make that seem embarrassing. So I would offer from a cyber perspective down at Fort Gordon, but I think on behalf of the other centers of excellence, we're all thinking through how do you keep pace with building mastery within that warfighting function at the pace that's being prototyped, tested, and the learning is evolving at a rapid rate out in the force.
Can I take the comment that General Ellis made there about, he would accept 60% or accept 40%. Let me direct that to the acquisition side. And how do you overcome kind of the culture from a PM perspective, from an acquisition perspective? I mean, how does industry going to have the confidence that if they turn in a 40% solution of the requirements, that's going to be acceptable? How do you overcome that bias?
Yeah, I can tell you that, and I know General Ellis can attest to this. So, early days of vendors getting involved in NGC2, I think there was a lot of concern that something didn't work quite perfectly in an environment, that would very quickly lead to a black eye that could impair kind of the momentum of the effort going forward. And I think that's born out of like real lived experience on acquisition programs, because what tended to happen is that because we had such a long development timeline that was absent a lot of this kind of soldier level interaction, by the time it actually got out there for sort of like, I'll call it a do or die operational test, that was way too late to kind of recover from significant deficiencies in what it was capable of doing. And so a test report that may say that it's not effective or effective with limitations, I mean, this was a significant emotional event for a lot of programs. And I think we've really kind of like short-circuited that. And the vendors that have been working with this, I think, have learned that and are certainly a lot more comfortable that there's no expectation of anything being perfect. In fact, as you just heard, there's a preference that it's not, because perfect in some ways means that, well, then you're done iterating on it, you're done making it better. And so I think that's a big trust factor. Again, a lot of this goes back to the requirements. I can't overstate that enough. I mean, the sheet upon which our PMs are being graded, the more flexible we can make that to accommodate what the division commanders and their teams are seeing as needed, makes everything go faster. Because if there's a document hanging out there that's in conflict with what they're seeing, what they're communicating to the acquisition teams and the industry teams that they need, then we kind of have a problem. But the way that we've got requirements set now, that's really been pushed down, the implementation of that to General Janovic and myself within the PAE, from the chief through General Hodney. And so we've got that ability to move very flexibly into, we're really actually using requirements at this point for our sort of fellow PAEs to put their demand signal into us, into what they need out of C2 and counter C2. That's kind of how we're managing, and not as a grading sheet for our program managers to know whether they've succeeded or they failed.
Let me stay with the grading point there. Could you first of all describe the change to how a PM might be graded that would encourage this, go with the 40% solution, number one, and then two, on the industry side, would this not also require a change to the grading on past performance? If they're being encouraged to turn in a partial solution that doesn't meet it, how's that going to affect the grading on past performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it has to do with how we write our contracts. Increasingly, these aren't contracts; these are agreements, under the OTA construct. So we've got kind of that inherent ability to do that. But in terms of our program managers, yeah, their whole acquisition program baseline is generally built against the requirements document. I do think this is an emerging area as we look at acquisition transformation. We probably, for our acquisition side, need to reconsider what is an acquisition program baseline. Traditionally, that is the cost, schedule, performance targets that you've been given, and your grading is how well you're staying within there. If you were to direct that question toward our division commanders down here in terms of what success looks like, they're not going to talk about acquisition metrics. They're going to talk about the speed at which we can move from the sense to target to effect kind of process. I mean, the more that we can incorporate the metrics that matter to our operational force into what we're doing, I think that's going to be the right solution. That's ultimately what's going to help us grade our acquisition efforts in a more effective way.
I've got a question here for the division commanders. We've talked a lot about the going fast, but this question is, what is slowing you down the most as you try to do the work of innovating faster? What is slowing you down the most?
Yes, Tom, I don't know that I'd say one thing. I get asked this question from time to time, like, what's the biggest obstacle? What's slowing you down the most? And I think folks were looking for us to point at one thing. What I argue is when you're in the prototyping phase here, what it is, it's not one big wall to climb over, it's a series of 3-foot walls. So as we climb over one wall, the stuff I was really, really frustrated with and concerned about for Ivy Sting 2 is not the stuff I'm concerned about in Ivy Sting 5 as we roll through this stuff. We have, I think, broken the code. If you asked me this 7 months ago, I would have talked about the authority to operate process. We're not building this stuff out in the training space or in the testing space. We're building this out in the operational space. So full ATO on all the products that are coming in NGC2. So all the applications that are coming in there, we're running the full ATO process. That was a struggle for a while. We figured that out now. We're going a lot faster. On the back end of Sting 5, things that I'm frustrated with, cross-domain solutions continue to be a little bit of a problem for us. We need to move our data across the sensitive but unclassified encrypted environment up to the secret environment and move the objects back and forth and move tasks back and forth. And we have figured out that the volume and pace at which we're able to consume data is now being choked off by the ability of the cross-domain solution to handle the flow of those electrons across it, making sure that we're in accordance with all security protocols. So no one thing to point at, Tom. I'd say that things like that are the problems that we work through. At Sting 4, the CDS was a huge problem. At Sting 5, we had a prototype solution that I'm feeling more confident with, and now we're going to build that out in both the cloud and on the local instance, and I think we'll be in a much better place here when we roll into Ivy Mass. So I kind of sidestepped your question. It's not that. It's like, and I don't know what the next problem's going to be. It feels like sometimes I'm pretty short. I can't see over that 3-foot wall until I climb over the one that's in front of me. So,
Gotcha. John Bartolomé?
Yeah, I think I'd align with Pat's answer here in terms of it's the incremental learning that really is what's getting there, and it's not any significant wall at this point. We've identified the best way to do this is place commercial and industry with soldiers and to iterate, but with the iteration comes smaller, immediate steps that we're overcoming. I think the biggest obstacle is ignoring that there are obstacles, and I think that's really been our problem that we've seen over time is that we've, and our soldiers and our leaders, and I'm looking at my signal officer in the back, is that he has been forced over the years to just accept what he's been given and just deal with it. And now it's a changing a culture of changing everyone's thought process and leaders is that you don't accept it unless the data flows from the point of the sensor to the point of the shooter to kill as fast as possible. We gave ourselves a time standard of under 4 minutes from an electronic signal of some type to a confirmation all the way through our fires architecture to a round impacting. And because we think that that's realistic of what we can accomplish. And you can set the parameters to do that in a very clean, scientific fashion. But when you put in all the battlefield swell of what's out there, of dealing with airspace management, of dealing with graphic control measures that support your fire control measures, the joint force, combined force partners, that becomes much more challenging.
Let me stay with you. Go back to you, General Ellis, for a question that's come in. You talked about Ivy Sting. What would you say is the significance of Ivy Mass, and what are your goals for that coming up?
I appreciate that. So I kind of talked through the flow, what Ivy Mass is going to look like. It's a division seal exercise. So it's kind of like 3 major priorities as part of that, and I do appreciate the question. The first one is, just to be clear, this is not a tech exercise. This is a division operation where we're going to have 2 brigades passing through each other, diverty, aircraft coming in and out, C-130s, mass casualty drills. We are running a division exercise that we will have happened to wrap Next Gen C2 around. So it's building our foundational organizational readiness, which is something that we can never neglect. And that's something the Army's always holding both Jay and I accountable for, is making sure that we are ready to go. So we're not pulling 4ID off the line. So this is a an environment where we're going to actually run a real operational test, and then we're going to put all the technology on top of that. Now, having said that, I think it's a great opportunity. We've tested kind of situational training lanes of the technology, but we have not put all of this stuff out in the field and turn it all on at once to see what the challenges are going to be. And I think for us, that's a great opportunity to turn all of this stuff on and see how it's all going to work or where the friction's going to be. And then the part that I'm actually even more excited about is this will be the first time we're bringing in a professional electromagnetic OPFOR, Mike Kalustian at the Command and Control Functional FCD now, Functional Capabilities Directorate. Mike Kalustian is bringing in this team of pros, and they're going to contest us in the electromagnetic space. They're going to contest us in the cyberspace. They're going to come at it all elements of next-gen C2. Not to like say, do this or don't do this, but really one, so we can go back to the industry partners and say, fix this or don't fix this, and then come back to me and say, look, as you're using these tools, this is the risk that you're assuming, and help me understand that, because as the commander, I think I own my risk in the electromagnetic space as well. I'm really excited for that as the third priority. We have not had the chance to do that at scale, and I think we're going to get a great rep and learn a ton about the next-gen C2 architecture, so thanks.
Well, that's a good segue to go back to you, General Janovic. Last year you said that you talked about the growth of electronic warfare, you talked about what we were seeing in Ukraine with Russia, and you said you're going to see this magnificent change in cyber electromagnetic warfare. I wonder if you could kind of describe the ingredients of that magnificence. What is that vision for the future of that going to look like?
There's times when you're quoted when you wonder why you use the word magnificent. But
it was a good quote.
No, it's wonderful. And I mean it sincerely, that what you have seen, if you've watched or if you want to watch, is the number of men and women who are now electromagnetic warfare operators and who are coming through training at Fort Gordon and doing it in a wholly different way than they might have done 6 months ago. Because we're rapidly adapting to lessons from the Ukraine, we have direct contact with the command there, and we're learning about how do we adapt the training. So just by sheer numbers, the number of men and women in these formations and those like it is quadrupling at a rate that is significant by itself. The second thing is we are equipping those forces so that they are in these training exercises in a much more relevant way than they were before, that they're helping the commanders attain some level of electromagnetic spectrum awareness and then make decisions about what can you do about it, either through your own behaviors or influencing other behaviors. And while that equipping is catching up with the formations that we've built, this MSOCON that we spoke of is that now a way to get more prototyping and be satisfied that the divisions might not all be pure fleeted with the same equipment, but they have the same capability and outcome to see, understand, and make decisions about how to dominate in the electromagnetic spectrum. So if you combine what we've done with building the formations at echelon, with changing the training and making it much more relevant based on extracted lessons learned and invested in our United States Army electromagnetic warfare strategy, and then finally with the idea of equipping forces and now committing to equipping them faster, better, and making sure that they have the best of equipment, not outdated equipment, that is what will and continues to make it, as you said, and apparently I did, magnificent.
Yeah, I would concur with the magnificence comment. I think that we're seeing that just as I came into command. Cyber Center of Excellence enabled a 17 Echo, 25 Echo frequency manager IMSO course, which was good because it was kind of alongside while we were transitioning the 15 Echo and the 15 Whiskey shadow operator, shadow maintainer into one MOS. And so we piloted that within the division with the support of the Centers of Excellence. Again, a great nexus of where the Centers of Excellence come together and support the operational force with folks in the field, because more and more of our soldiers need to become experts in drones, but more and more of our soldiers, if not all, need to become experts in electronic warfare. And so from the really it's across the 17 series electronic warfare, all of our 25 series, all of our intelligence formations that for years we've worked through this in terms of how our SIGINT collection teams as well as our electronic warfare collection teams work together, similar equipment. And then also it goes in the protection realm. See General Beck out here, this is a significant protection issue, and that's really what Pat's exercise is going to get after, and we all have to learn from. We see it happening in real time in the Middle East. We're all studying have been studying what's happening in Ukraine and have been watching this for years. But Next Gen C2 is enabling us to be able to visualize this, to be able to put this in a commander's situation understanding so we can actually do something with this. And we appreciate all of industry's focus on the electronic warfare opportunities that we have, because we're seeing more of this proliferate and more understanding of how we see, sense, attack, defend, hide, mask, deceive. This is a fine art form that we have to, a maneuver art form that we have to continue to hone.
Let me, given the salience of, and growing salience of electromagnetic warfare, I wonder, Mr. Welch, if you could talk about, it doesn't just affect your PAE. The EW activities are going to hit our Excalibur rounds or our radars. How are you working with other PAEs on this topic area, across the Army there?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. And you're correct, and it's also not just in EW. I mean, C2 is also a very classic example of we're there to support all of our other PAEs who represent their warfighting functions. So, yeah, we do have this sort of like central role in the process, and I think the approach that we take is that, as I was describing earlier, we've kind of built, we have reshaped fundamentally the way that we have done our requirements. But these are critical inputs from them to us about their own problem statements. The way we had done this in the past is that we would have the money for various C2 activities or EW activities, and they would be in many, many different budget line items. They could be controlled by different PMs or PEOs. And what we've done under this effort with NGC2, and we did some of this line consolidation last year with electromagnetic warfare, is to start pulling that together. And that's not to take, kind of the voice away from those other customers, as you've described, our other PAEs. It's to enable us to go after that quickly and efficiently. So we have a regular and recurring biweekly sync among the 6 of us. I described at our panel a couple days ago that one of the advantages is that there are only, 6 PAEs for everything the Army's doing across modernization. So we don't actually need to add a ton of process flow diagrams to sort of figure out how things get, communicated and passed through. We can just have kind of quick conversations about that. I'm sure that General Janovic can follow me up here in some of the specific ones he's had in the EW area. But I mean, I think that's kind of how we've been constructed within this PAE construct and how we handle cross-portfolio issues. Did you have something?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. The area I'd like to follow up specifically is the relationship between electromagnetic warfare and intel. That's long been a discussion point about where are those two families of sensing and understanding together. And I would offer that, though he's not here, regrettably, Rick Applehans is a great partner in that regard. He and I recently published on this topic about where EW and SIGINT fit together, not where they are apart. And the fact that we published is interesting. What it took to get there is more important. We blew through a lot of the old thinking on why they needed to be separate and distinct. Yes, there are lines of authorities, and we fully respect and understand them, but they can't be used as reasons to not make progress in electromagnetic warfare. So Rick and I have worked together. We've rewritten some doctrine and some policy within the Army to allow for both those things to coexist together. And we work very closely with Rick and his team as we move through the MSOCON, as he thinks about intel requirements, this whole family of sensing. Why are you sensing? What is it for? And where does the data go? That's where we start to draw lines about who's using it for what reasons. But at the initial set point, we are not starting from different starting lines. We're starting together and working through that. So I really wanted to highlight the relationship of 2 centers of excellence, Intel and Cyber in this case, solving a problem that could be prevented, slowed, or the wall of obstacle made much higher than 3 feet based on old thinking, and we're blowing through that to move through Pat's 3-foot wall and get to the next problem. So that Rick's not here is regrettable, but I look forward to having you read, and we'll continue to write about what we're doing in that field.
A number of questions have come in back again on the acquisition side. I think I'm going to try to combine a couple of them. One of them, Mr. Welch, you were quoted saying you want to leverage commercial as much as you can. How is that being manifest concretely, number one? And number two, I think this is a great question that's come in. Given the demand signals with the speed of need and the smaller, more frequent buys, what should industry expect to see in the form of a demand signal that communicates quantity?
Sure. Okay. So good questions. Yeah, the first one about how does the commercial really manifest? It's kind of like what we see when General Ellis mentioned solution summits, and broadly we do try to communicate as much as we can. AUSA events have been fantastic. We do many other engagements within the team and across our partners here to be able to communicate these problems we have. When we see industry showing up with I understand your problem, and here's my plan for how I can build you a bespoke software solution to do something, right? Like that's not meeting the need of our division commanders at the speed that we're moving. Commercial first, what we're seeing is that there are companies, increasingly we're seeing companies that have commercial business cases. They have very mature products. For example, in airspace, airspace management is not just a U.S. Army problem, right? It's a commercial aviation challenge as well. And we found that there are companies that are very skilled in certain areas of that. And when we start casting a wider net about our problem space, we're hearing from companies, including in that domain, that come and say, hey, I've got something that's super mature. It might need some adjustments, modifications in your environment, but the kind of the core IP and the mechanism that we would use to license it basically built on a commercial product. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that we think about when we're looking at commercial first. Nothing bespoke. Customization of commercial, configuration of that, I mean, I think that's a spot we certainly can be in. The Army is unique in a lot of ways, but it really shouldn't be when it comes to like the core essence of what software can enable us to do. So that's on that one. In terms of the demand signals and how we buy and things like that, yeah, we are working through that. The difference between 4th ID and 25th ID in terms of how we've done these prototypes is, from a hardware perspective, their starting point, right? As General Bartholomew's mentioned, a recently fielded C2 fixed unit with the integrated tactical network. So we had relatively recently done kind of a tech reset, and we're largely using a lot of those capabilities successfully with the NGC2 prototype. We're learning, I think, that there are probably some tweaks we still need to make to that baseline in order to move forward. And of course, very much a ISV heavy MBCT construct within 25th ID. A little different in 4th ID, both in terms of the organization and equipment, and then in the C2 capabilities really wasn't starting from that more recent starting point. So this is all like extremely helpful data as me and my team on the acquisition side are looking across what are the types of things we may need for ITN equipped units or units that we hadn't got to with ITN yet. I think where we're going to get, and I know General Taylor has talked about this often, is there likely will be for a given unit type, whether it's an MBCT, an SBCT, an ABCT, kind of a core set of capabilities that are going to provide you, your basic NGC2. I do believe that there's a lot of other capabilities that can plug into our tech stack at the top layer, like when it comes to different applications or AI models, at the bottom of the tech stack where it comes to our transport solutions, MeshNet radios, PLEO devices, things like that, where I anticipate we're going to have relatively higher level of customization ability based on what that division or corps may need, their mission set, what their other equipment status looks like. So this is stuff I recognize that we owe industry in terms of how we do that. We have written our budget materials that are going to be coming out in President's Budget 27 that will communicate to our best attempt to describe what that looks like and relatively how much money we're putting in, or requesting, I should say, into these different areas. But we're going to have to continue through these dialogues, industry days that we do and things like that to get down to that discrete level, because we're still learning a ton through the prototyping efforts. But that's something that we're committed to.
Let me stay with you there. You've also talked about using the Silicon Valley model for procurement. What concretely is the Silicon Valley model in your mind?
Well, another aspect of commercial, and certainly what you see in Silicon Valley, I mean, we're not we are no longer in this mode of kind of paying to develop software capability. Most of the examples of that I've been involved in my acquisition career have led to things that are they are taking too long to get that capability out there. There are no market forces that are really driving the rapid conclusion of that effort. If we say we want to buy commercial, or if we want to adhere to a Silicon Valley model, it's certainly to go fast, but it's also like the customer's not paying the bill for the development of that capability. We are certainly committed to acquiring capability when we move beyond our prototyping phase and we get into kind of our, as NGC2 goes to market, if you will. And I've communicated multiple times in many different forums that me and my team, we are happy to have these conversations now about what pricing may look like, whether that's through enterprise agreements or contracts, or different business models for, whether it's as a service, subscription-based, whatever it is that would, align the value of that commercially derived proprietary software capability that the Army can use. So we want you to have confidence that there is, a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to how this could be bought. But we don't want to make the mistake of paying for the development while we're doing this prototyping activity. That just tends to never have a well-defined ending. It actually can be it can create counter incentives because the no-risk option of getting paid by the Army to continue to develop may be more appealing than the risky option of working with the Army and trying to put forward a good product in the expectation or hopes that we'll buy it in production. So I think more and more companies are understanding that as they've worked within us. They may show up at one of our divisions and think that we're under the old model and then realize that we're really under the new one. But I think they're also seeing how serious we are about this, how committed we are. They can see in our budget materials how serious we are from kind of the resourcing perspective and how much money we are putting behind this. And I think they're calculating correctly that this is a good risk to take, right? Putting some more of their internal investment or their investors' money into iterating down in these environments with us is going to have a payoff in the end if they build a product that we need and we're going to use.
Back to you, General Bartolomeus. This question asks, how are we integrating the lessons learned from Tropic Lightning and Admiral Paparo's priorities across Indo-PACOM?
So Admiral Paparo's focus is on Prevail, which is to be forward, and then General Clark is focused on ready forward. So having forces forward ready at the time that we need to be ready to defend our allies and deter our adversaries. And our Lightning Surge series that we're executing is much like the Ivy Stings, develops specific goals with an end state focused around, we developed an architecture of how we synchronize and pulling together the data that we have, how we integrate with our allies and partners as well as the Joint Force. We work very closely with 1MEF and the 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment in the Philippines as an example, and then obviously we're partnered directly with the Philippines. Our third element that we grade ourselves on is how we see and sense, and so using the sensors that we have as well as those that are outside of our realm, how do we integrate those data models? The decision making associated with those, we're working closely with 4th Infantry Division and some of the models that they're using so that we can learn from one another and then grade ourselves. And actually some of the Indo-PACOM work that they've done within JADC2 and the Indo-PACOM Mission Network, we have to integrate all of those factors in as given that direction. And it's fairly easy for us, given that we're stationed in Hawaii on the same island with both of those higher headquarters, because we'll get a lot of synchronization with these up to this point with our Lightning Surges, because they've all been in the Hawaiian Islands. But as we bring this out to the Philippines, this becomes a little bit more challenging because we're going to be doing this in the terrain that we rehearse in with our partners in a much more austere environment. But all of it is meant to see, sense, and strike faster, to have decision advantage over our adversaries in all domains.
Well, let me give each of you an opportunity to kind of close out. Well, I might begin with you, General Bartholomew, and work the way back down the panel. Is Anything else you want to get out there, but also is there one thing that you would most like industry and other partners to understand better about this new model and what they and how they can best engage with the PAE, for instance? We'll work back down.
Yeah, we really appreciate the partnership with industry, and we've learned a lot from one another. I'd echo a lot of Mr. Welsh's comments in terms of licensing for software and paying for licenses and things like that. In the years leading up to this, there was a lot of that was occurring within a lot of divisions across the Army because I don't think the acquisition field was moving fast enough. Those days are over. So staying aligned with the PAEs and working through them is really the best way that you're going to get movement. Because we've got a much better model now in place with the PIT, with the GIOPS going into place, with First Corps and with our higher headquarters, and the GTID that exists under USERPAC in order to have a landing spot for industry to provide requirements. We as the users and the warfighters are still going to receive those, but I think it's going to help streamline and hopefully decrease some of the frustration with industry that's been working with us in terms of where do we go to in terms of to provide a capability. Those landing spots and this architecture that the Army has put together, I really applaud, and I think it's going to make it makes this relationship a much easier relationship so that we can move faster together.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's kind of a three-legged stool, really. It's the unit that's using the technology, it's the industry teammates that are helping us build out that technology, and then it's our acquisition teammates that are all kind of working these problems together. So it's not one or the other, and you know, coming and selling stuff to us is not the way it's working. It's actually a discussion that we have inside of the PAE construct now with our trail boss to say, hey, we think this technology is super useful. I would love for industry to understand that. It's like, if you want to go fast with us, you've got to be ready to play, and we've actually had folks come say, I can do that. We bring them out there. This is not something where you sell it to us, or, you know, convince us it's a good idea, and then 6 months later get to deliver. And we've actually had to say, no, thank you, that's not ready, and when you're ready, come on back. So I think that's, from my perspective, that's kind of important. The other part, I think, is really the self-organization that we're seeing as well. I really like that. We looked at the aerospace stuff Mr. Walsh was talking about. The folks that are working that, it's 4 disparate companies that would not normally work together. We kind of saw that each had a piece and said, hey, we think this is a good idea. They self-organized around the problem and are doing what Mr. Welsh talked about, which is building out the software and then working on a path back to production like he talked about. So from my perspective, yeah, we got to get folks involved and come to see us, but really there's also an industry-to-industry discussion that we're finding very, very valuable. So
I'll just quickly add that the rest of 26, calendar year 26, we will be moving very aggressively through the MSOCON and its subordinate documents and getting this dialogue moving in terms of framing. What I would offer is it's going to continue to be an Occam's razor problem. We are only going to write that which is essential to open up the aperture to say, how can you help us build this capability or solve this problem? And so to Joe's earlier point, we're not going to over-define problems. We want to create opportunity and create discourse and create that teaming that Pat talked about and that Jay's talked about, that they get to see in action in the prototyping phase. So we look forward to the continued dialogue. We appreciate the feedback to date, but that healthy dialogue is only going to be that which is necessary to move quickly to the next step and solve the next problem.
Okay. So, Tom, thanks again, and for everyone, listening to our panel here today. We've spent a lot of time talking about Next Gen C2, and it is in the context of a larger panel, but portfolio. But it's also really our, it's kind of our leading edge, right? This is the philosophy and the approach that we've seen succeed there. We're confident it can apply into electromagnetic spectrum operations. We're confident it can apply to intel training. And so, we really think we're on the right track here. And if when it comes to Next Gen C2, I can't emphasize enough that it is all about moving at speed. Everything General Ellis talked about with regard to being ready now. In fact, shortly, I'm sure that we'll be no longer talking about this thing called Next Gen C2. It'll very rapidly evolve into simply Army C2. This is just what we are doing. And I'll just maybe leave you with a kind of paraphrase remark I got from one of our industry partners earlier this week. Was pointing out to me the perspective that they've never seen an approach that's been this effective in this environment, with the government, essentially telling industry to show up, open your systems, and integrate with what you have right now, right? And again, acknowledge what General Ellis said. If something's coming down, there's always new technologies coming down the pipe. That's great. We'll take that too when it's ready. But we're providing that environment right now, and it's really not for the Army to lead, but to help facilitate. That's where we've seen the success. So I recognize how different a business model this is for those of you that are used to dealing with our acquisition system and how we manage its delivery into the operational force in a very specific way. I'm encouraged to see that more and more. I know that this is resonating. I know there's also still comments and questions. Please keep those coming. We make ourselves available as much as possible, including across the PAE team, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to deliver this capability as quickly as we can to our soldiers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a great discussion. Thanks for all the great questions that came in. I also just want to thank General Braun and the whole AUSA team, CSIS partners with AUSA on our strategic land power dialogue back up in DC's, and really appreciate that partnership. So we just ask the audience to please join me in thanking the panel for their remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ms. Rhonda Sutton, President of AUSA's 3rd Region.
Good morning. My name is Rhonda Sutton, 3rd Region President of AUSA. I hope all of you in attendance have had a wonderful week here in my hometown. Yes, I have indeed lived here my whole life. The final event, hosted by the Redstone Huntsville chapter, is currently underway and ends with a luncheon honoring our ROTC and our JROTC cadets. This year's theme is Cadets, Past, Present, and Future, as we are incorporating the Army ROTC Hall of Fame induction ceremony for the class of 2025. The Army ROTC Hall of Fame is celebrating their 10th anniversary this year, so we are delighted to partner with them for this important recognition and give our local JROTC cadets a chance to meet some great Army ROTC alumni. We have almost 500 JROTC cadets and students from the Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering here today. The cadets and sentinels from ASCTE are on the show floor this morning and are participating in a leadership panel afterwards. For our luncheon, we will welcome city and county administrators, school system superintendents, along with Major General Retired Andy Manera, Major General Kevin Meisler, U.S. Army Materiel Command, Chief of Staff and Assistant Deputy Commanding General for Reserve Affairs, who will be providing the keynote message. This promises to be a fantastic way to close out this year's symposium. Personally, it's my favorite event that the chapter does each year. I've been a part of it since we started having Global Force Symposium here in Huntsville. On behalf of this chapter and the other chapters in the 3rd Region, thanks again for coming this week. We will now take a 30-minute break and return here at 10:30 to hear from General Hodney. Thank you.
It really meant a lot to me. You mean a lot to me.
I really mean that much to you?
Girl, you know it's true. Well, I sat back and thought about the things we used to do. It really meant a lot to me.
All right. Welcome back. Come on in, folks coming in. Let me tell you, smartest thing you've done is stay. Some people, left early. Bad move, because you got a tremendous speaker coming up. And good news is we're streaming this, and we'll also play it on YouTube later, but you're going to hear it firsthand right here, and really smart to stay. I hope you've enjoyed so far. The keynotes have been fantastic. The panel's excellent. And the floor is just buzzing out there, like networking like I've never seen. But for our cleanup batter, put some pressure on our next keynote. He's going to, we've had some great ones, as I said, but he's going to take it to the next level. And I've known this individual for 30 years, watched him grow as a leader, unbelievable, combat-proven leader. And really, when you look at his resume, what he's done, it was a perfect preparation to take transformation and training command, the right leader in the right job, and a critical job for our Army right now, as you've seen this whole week, an absolutely critical job. So without further ado, let's hear from General Dave Hodney, Transformation and Training Command Commander. Dave?
Good morning. General Braun, thanks for that kind introduction, and thanks to AUSA for hosting another great event. I also want to thank all the AUSA chapters for their support across the country who enabled the U.S. Army Transformation and Training Command industry engagements. This has been a great week, and I also want to thank everyone in the auditorium who stuck it out to Day 3 in Rocket City for the Global Force Symposium. Last year, I joined many of you here listening to General Jim Rainey deliver the keynote on this stage while commanding Army Futures Command. What a difference a year makes. 200 days following our activation, on behalf of my teammates, I'm certainly humbled to introduce you to and share the perspective from T2 Comp. Witnessing the character of war evolve in real time, no one debates the merits of the stark reality of today's battlefield captured in this quote. What can be seen can be hit. What can be hit can be killed. Reviewing studies of warfare in Ukraine over the past 4 years, or monitoring the daily feed from the Middle East, today's leaders not only understand the implications of this quote, they actively strive to revive once lost basics. Camouflage, dispersion, and deception, seeking to break the link between being seen, targeted, and killed. Interestingly enough, it was actually General William Dupuy in 1973 who coined "what can be seen can be hit, and what can be hit can be killed." This informed by observing Egyptian and Syrian forces clash in the Yom Kippur War. Teammates, military, and industry. Dupuy's quote may sound familiar, but in many respects, we enter unfamiliar territory. Today's evolution of sense and strike is the adaptive problem of our time. New solutions, new counters, with evolution measured in days and weeks rather than months and years. Acknowledging this, our challenge is to transform our Army at speed and at scale to yield land power. A United States Army that can gain initiative for the entire joint force. And this land force initiative is critical to defeating adversaries who benefit from advantages of mass and interior lines. In his day, Dupuy saw the Army was dangerously out of position. In response, he went about the task of updating it. New institutions, new concepts, new doctrine, new weapons. 50 years ago, today's operating environment would have been inconceivable. Strategically, the threat Dupuy's era faced was also singular. China's proximity to contested areas in the Indo-Pacific, paired with advanced anti-access and area denial systems and long-range precision fires, constitutes a multi-domain strike complex that incurs persistent risk for U.S. and partner nation forces. Where we once characterized the former Soviet Army as a rigid and hierarchical fires army, today's Russian Army demonstrates remarkable adaptation on the modern battlefield. integrating sense and strike complexes, electronic warfare, and unmanned systems, all at lower forward echelons and in ways that directly challenge legacy assumptions. And Iran sustains asymmetric attacks across the Middle East using low-cost munitions and long-range fires to present strategic global dilemmas. None of these adversaries operate in isolation. They collude, they learn, and could even present a simultaneity dilemma, necessitating change across the joint force. This reinforces our urgency to transform in contact and transform continuously. The President's executive order for modernizing defense acquisitions, the Secretary of War's directive on Army transformation and acquisition reform, and the Secretary of the Army's letter to the force announcing the Army Transformation Initiative share a common acknowledgement. The security environment I broadly framed poses consequential and potentially catastrophic risk. Legacy institutional approaches were not built for uncertainty, nor are they nimble. And absent necessary transformation, we will not keep pace at the speed of relevancy. Some of this is self-inflicted. 2 decades of post-9/11 counterinsurgency operations expanded headquarters and stripped manpower from warfighting formations. Something had to change. Distilled very simply, there's a part of the Army that fights and a part of the Army that builds the Army that fights. The Army that fights is the showroom floor. In discussing this context with General Perkins before I assumed command of T2COM, he reminded me that everyone wants to be on the showroom floor. Well, T2COM is on the assembly line, the engine room of the Army, partnered with ASALT, Army Material Command, and the Army staff. We build the Army that fights. We deliver capability. More importantly, for the first time since World War II, the whole assembly line, force design, force development, and force generation, labs to recruiting centers, combat training centers to branch schools, recruits to robots, all connected under one command. Having served as a general officer in both the former TRADOC and Army Futures Command, I'd offer that when siloed, those organizations lack the authority and resources to fully execute their tasks. Worse, the respective staffs often lacked awareness of parallel efforts, resulting often in redundant work and often at cross purposes. Linking these actions together allows staffs throughout the assembly line to better anticipate emerging requirements or respond to potential friction. This approach is also how you turn the assembly line into an agile production model. On the far right is the Futures and Concepts Command, or FCC. FCC has the pen for the Army warfighting concept and runs the Army's Title X war games to inform future requirements and force design, how we organize to win tomorrow. Partnered with the Army Service Component Commands, they seek to provide decision space for Army senior leaders and inform the Army's plan, Total Army Analysis. In the middle is the Combined Arms Command, or CAC. CAC is responsible for implementing the Army's plan, how we organize to win tonight, hosting the Centers of Excellence, the new Army University system, and now the combat training centers. CAC leads all force development activities. On the left is the U.S. Army Recruiting Command. Responsible for force generation, they connect skilled non-commissioned officers and senior leaders, recruiters and ROTC cadre, with drill sergeants and platform instructors to resource the Army's plan with the right manpower aligned against the future trajectory of the Army. This structure is not a simple reorganization, but rather is a deliberate reset designed to close the gaps between vision and execution. T2COM's mission is simple: enable the Army to defeat all adversaries and adapt to the ever-changing character of war. T2COM's expanded purpose is to redefine how the Army generates, develops, and designs its forces, creating an agile framework that ensures readiness. We value disciplined initiative and disruption to overcome the drawbacks of past processes. And we will innovate with urgency. We will deliver more lethal, agile, and future-ready formations, all of which strengthen the profession. In another trip down memory lane, this time to 1983, General Don Starry published an article to change an Army. His framework reoriented the post-Vietnam Army squarely toward the Soviet menace. He was the architect of the Army of Excellence. Many today rightfully respect Starry's thoughts, as do I. He also operated in a widely different context. In 1983, information moved at the predictable pace of news cycles. Today's overwhelming and hyperactive flow of information collapses the time between observation and action. While Starry's adjustments were the right response to a known problem, today's environment requires something new. Thanks for allowing me to walk you through T2COM's top 10, the marching orders for this command. Our first key task is transform. There's a fundamental difference between change and transformation. For decades, the Army directed change, revising organizational line and block charts and doing old things differently. Armed with hindsight, most previous efforts to change, including the vaunted Army of Excellence, arguably can be framed now as tinkering with divisions. When we anchor in the past or try to replicate past approaches buttressed by new technology, this constitutes change, doing old things differently, improving what exists. Change alone is insufficient for today's environment. Transformation fundamentally alters our approach to solving problems. Instead of doing old things differently, we must do entirely new things. To be fair, the Army attempted to transform at the start of the 21st century. Stryker Brigade combat teams arguably defined the first transformed tactical organization, a mobile and networked street-legal IBCT with more javelins, mortars, and snipers than any other formation. Interrupted on 9/11, this was only the bow wave of what was to come. What followed only recently were multi-domain task forces, mobile brigade combat teams, rockets and division artillery, next-generation command and control, and new simulation tools like next-generation constructive. Transformation requires rejecting the legacy approaches that stymie progress, limit innovation, and reward a resilient, unhelpful, and often entrenched status quo. Most fundamentally, it requires redefining how the Army operates, organizes, and equips, rewarding and empowering discipline initiative to solve adaptive problems. The historic and decisive inactivation of Army Futures Command and the Training and Doctrine Command and the activation of T2COM reflects the Army's commitment to do what it takes to transform. Again, I respect both of my former organizations, but T2COM is neither. And we endeavor to incorporate as much of the good and as little of the bad of my former teams. Key task number 2 is organize. I'd like to share the T2COM task organization chart. If this looks complex, it's because it is. Everything about modern warfare is complex. For those in the back, don't pull out your binoculars. This is intended to be illustrative. A few things about our organization. T2COM is always the supporting command. T2COM organizes around supporting Army Service Component commands and the operational force. Unlike other task organization charts, you'll see the formations we support at the center of our task organization. Also in the center of the task organization chart is a depiction of the emerging Army warfighting concept. Concepts define how we organize, operate, and equip, and are also central to how T2COM organizes. The nodes within the warfighting concept depict the centers of excellence. Traditional line and block charts and the associated decision hierarchy introduces latency. Today's battlefield constitutes clashes of systems, red against blue. We need to get comfortable operating within this construct. Teammates have to look up, down, all around simultaneously, and all nodes are empowered to collaborate across this organization. This task organization also frames various types of problems: simple, complex, and adaptive. The first two, simple and complex, fall squarely within those blue nodes. The leaders of the teams have all the tools they need to solve those problems. The third type of problem is adaptive. When you apply a solution, the nature of the problem changes. Adaptive problems fall between the nodes. Where these problems arise, my expectation is that the surrounding nodes converge to solve that problem. Adaptive problems require change in culture and mindset, and the organization keeps moving as they learn and adjust working through these problems. This requires a formation that behaves as an integrated system. This task organization chart very much frames my intent: empowering leaders at echelon, reporting to discipline, initiative, and collaboration. My team is available to continue to educate on the nodes and the various elements on this chart. You can't go wrong if you start at the center, with the centers of excellence. Key task 3 is lead. T2COM leads the Army's strategic development and design to yield the Army's war-winning force and informed TAA through iterative force design updates. We leverage analysis to inform warfighting concepts and rapidly translate them into operational concepts, all framed as running estimates. This provides decision space for senior leaders and retains agility consistent with the changing character of war. The power of aligning concepts and doctrine is evidenced in airland battle, where Army and joint investments toward this concept eventually bankrupted the Soviet Union. With our emerging Army warfighting concept, the Army will have hosted 6 concepts over the last 50 years. The first 3 spanned 40 years, and the next 3 would span 10. This evolution will only continue to accelerate. Again, concepts define how we organize, operate, and equip. And we see on today's battlefields in Iran, Gaza, the broader Middle East, and Ukraine, that traditional sanctuary no longer exists. We also know our adversaries seek to organize their forces and capabilities to wage systems destruction warfare, targeting critical military, C2, strike, and ISR systems, and even economic and infrastructure targets. The absence of sanctuary and the disappearance of rear areas introduces the notion of all-arms maneuver. On a transparent battlefield, all formations, including sustainment, intelligence, and protection elements, must continuously maneuver and disperse to survive. Today's battlefield requires formations to maneuver to sense, maneuver to fire, maneuver to protect, maneuver to sustain. All arms maneuvers built upon 4 components, all underpinned by intelligence and information. Now, formations must fight to preserve their own command and control, while actively degrading the command and control of our adversary. The relationship between C2 and counter C2 yields the decision advantage critical to victory. Land forces must also employ cross-domain fires from and to all domains to induce systemic failure in enemy systems and create windows for maneuver. Army fires are critical to the success of the entire joint force. Army formations must also view logistics as a maneuver function, using predictive analytics and decentralized nodes to ensure endurance in a contested fight. Much like distributing our C2 nodes, we must conduct agile sustainment in a multimodal and multinodal context. Only when we comprehensively integrate the intelligence warfighting function and employ and synchronize these activities simultaneously will we realize the layered protection necessary to press the fight. This also requires a holistic system of active and passive measures to make our forces harder to see, target, and kill. How we operate, organize, and equip must be informed by threat and resources. And FCC, in partnership with the Army staff and Army service components, orchestrates strategic development and design to inform Army investments. Key Task 4 is partner. T2Com partners at Echelon with acquisition teammates to deliver capability to the formations we support. I am grateful for my partnership with Mr. Brent Ingraham and his entire team at ASALT. We make informed trades, leveraging experimentation, simulation, war games, research, and industry projections. And we insert capabilities continuously into formations to enhance soldier feedback and inspire their confidence in continuous transformation. I mentioned earlier the collective need to reform our approach to delivering capability. PAEs are not a rebranding of AFC's cross-functional teams. That would be change. CFTs focused on signature modernization efforts, capturing only a portion of the broader portfolios. Having been in the fray as a CFT director, what existed in practice was an alphabet soup of organizations, capability development integration directorates, and capability managers, TRADEC proponent offices, and fielded force integration directorates, each voting and in some cases vetoing each other's requirements. 47 organizations have now been consolidated into 9 future capability directorates. More importantly, they're partnered directly with both the Center of Excellence commanding generals, experts in the warfighting functions, and seasoned and senior acquisition professionals. They are not championing singular modernization efforts. They oversee entire portfolios aligned with how we must fight. PAEs now bring the entire requirements and acquisition landscape together, responsible for requirements, contracting, testing, acquisition, and sustainment. By strengthening the partnership with acquisition professionals, the COEs are now fully resourced to integrate all aspects of capabilities, including materiel. They're also only 3 to 4 months old, and we'll learn a lot together. So why does this matter? In a conversation with the chief, I offered he would likely never have seen an entire portfolio in the legacy AROC process. Now he will see the entire portfolio at routine intervals throughout the year. Key task 5 is scale. T2Com teams with ASCCs to scale relevant innovation practices for the Army, relentlessly focusing on the soldiers and leaders we support. T2Com activated shortly after the Army designated units for the second tranche of Transformation in Contact, or TIC. TIC alone is one approach to scaling, and our Army looks much different today than it did 2 years ago. Culturally, units not designated as TIC units certainly wanted to be. However, soldiers in every formation across our Army are innovating. This certainly sets the culture across formations hungry to scale. DevCom's Catalyst Pathfinder teams integrated across divisions to foster a culture of innovation. This summer, these teams are expanding. Design, innovation, research, and technology, or DIRT labs, to the JRTC and NTC OP4 to accelerate soldier innovation and to get the OP4 at least 6 months ahead of the Blue 4. Transformation lessons learned managers within COEs provide a critical link between the showroom floor and the assembly line, from defensive fires integration and operational health records to autonomous breaching experiments and next generation C2. The TLIMs are bringing back critical observations. In addition to harnessing the innovation through sharing best practices, we're cleaning up how we codify requirements through characteristics of needs or cons. The Under mentioned this on Tuesday. These are now our primary means to start dialogue with you, our industry partners. Cons provide an overarching description of a complex transformation challenge and desired outcome without prescribing a solution. This fosters speed and leverages your ingenuity. Key task 6 is train. T2Com leverages combat training centers, or CTCs, as the centerpiece of Army transformation. We replicate the complexity and lethality of today's large-scale combat, modernize the OP4, upskill personnel, rethink training models, and deliberately integrate experimentation. We must also master the fundamentals. because the final yards still remain the most dangerous place on the planet. Former CTC veterans recall they were originally established by TRADOC in the 1980s to change and professionalize an all-volunteer Army. The history of our modern Army is etched in the deserts or the sands of the Mojave. The hardest lessons are also always learned in one of two places: combat or a combat training center. Occurring at the latter saves us from the former. Changing hands between TRADOC and FORSCOM, these headquarters used CTCs to build training readiness synchronized against global force demands. However, acknowledging that combat today is completely different, current BCT rotations leave untapped potential. We must reimagine how we yield readiness while we transform, leveraging experienced observer coach trainers to continuously experiment, accelerate transformation, reward innovation, and truly solve today's battlefield dilemmas. For those familiar with the former annual convergence events, this experimentation will now occur routinely throughout the year at CTCs. Where we once learned how to penetrate the Soviet defense in depth, we need to solve the problem posed by the manned-unmanned contact layer, hosting denied, degraded, contested, intermittent, and latent environment. Key Task 7 is sharpen. T2COM improves training and develops leaders through agile practices, leverages recent lessons and observations, strengthens linkages with the operational force, nimbly revises programs of instruction, and organizes all associated data into useful and accessible formats. As a battalion commander, I deployed to Iraq with a box of manuals from the Center of Army Lessons Learned. Today, that's obviously not the best approach for an agile Army. Today, we have the tools, databases, and mechanisms to access data in real time. We need first an AI-enabled smart search capability with a sequenced family, not just one, of large language models that query millions of databases and synthesize answers in seconds. Second, a social learning platform, multimedia, mobile, shareable across formations, so soldiers can post, share, and learn from each other the way they already do in every other part of their lives. Third, an Army knowledge mesh, distributed across all domains, organizations, and classification levels, that facilitates the rapid transmission of ideas and observations across the entire force. We're developing that tool, Victor. By organizing battlefield feedback, lessons learned, tactical observations, and training data into useful and accessible formats, Victor closes the loop between what soldiers experience in the field and what the institutional Army teaches in the schoolhouse. With Victor from their personal mobile devices, soldiers can download lessons our Centers of Excellence document from Ukraine, apply them at a CTC rotation, share their assessment amongst their social learning community, and advance the base of knowledge across the force to innovate in peace and adapt and win in combat. A lesson observed in theater today can inform revisions to a program of instruction, yield a material requirement, develop a new MOS, or validate emerging concepts without waiting for the traditional institutional cycles to complete. Jim Eisenhower's team at CAC is working on Victor now, with a goal to release this summer. Key Task 8 is reimagine. T2COM transforms Army education to keep pace with both the trajectory of modern warfare and the trajectory of the contemporary higher civilian education. This inspires confidence in all leaders, soldiers, and formations of the value of institutional learning and their own self-development. The Center for Army Learning Innovation, or CALI, and the redefined Army University system will serve as the centerpiece for this reform. Academia already benefits from distributed, accessible, and technology-enabled learning platforms. In partnership with Arizona State University and other educational institutions, the Army University system is expanding education across access while reducing the time and cost burdens that have historically challenged scaling professional development. This partnership is already being implemented across 6 centers of excellence, and we intend to stand up Cali this summer. Key task number 9 is deliver. T2COM delivers trained and ready soldiers, resources total Army analysis, while orienting on future requirements. We will mend seams across legacy initial entry and functional training pipelines to deliver future capability, and will enable precision recruiting and invest in new soldiers critical to today's and tomorrow's profession. Previously, the force generation pipeline involved multiple agencies in the movement of people, from civilian to recruit, to trainee to soldier. And if you looked at past processes, you might trip over paper clips and spreadsheets. This manual and segmented process also resulted in unnecessary attrition. At the same time, our recruiters combed through pages of phone numbers to call a generation conditioned to ignore unknown numbers. Modern tools included AI-enabled analytics, digital outreach, advanced market modeling, and new talent matching systems are being fielded to deliver precision recruiting. Today, USAREC has already achieved 80% of the recruiting mission, just over 6 months into the fiscal year. In addition, the new Accessions information environment will bring together 30 legacy systems and 15 databases providing real-time visibility this pipeline demands. The Future Soldier application is available now, with the potential to keep recruits connected from the moment they sign until they ship. Key task 10 is modernize. T2COM leverages software-centric processes, builds lean, agile, and adaptive systems supported by AI, real-time data, and predictive analytics, supporting rapid decision-making and enabling continuous transformation. We will scale software capability to solve commanders' problems. For example, the Army Software Factory partnered with the 18th Airborne Corps and the broader airborne community, delivered Airborne Ready, the first soldier-created program of record. Airborne Ready modernizes jump logs from World War II era forms to an Army-wide data platform. This capability saves over 300,000 man-hours annually. Think about those company training rooms. Supports soldiers across all components, and enables instant visualization of readiness metrics. I tell leaders today, there is no more exciting time to serve and lead in our Army. Just in the past 200 days, the Aviation and Missile Center successfully tested the first ever launched effect from an AH-64. DevCom, AVMIC, the Aviation FCD, and PM Apache worked in tandem with industry to deliver this capability. The Army Applications Laboratory fielded 20 experimental autonomous capabilities to the 1st Cav Division through X-Tech Overwatch as part of the 1st Armor Brigade TIC effort. Partnered with ASALT, we fast-tracked modifications to the M7 rifle to yield the M8 carbine. The last conversion like this from the M16 to the M4 took 20 years. This program reflects the success story of increased congressional authorities for rapid prototyping and fielding, and demonstrates the value of feedback from soldiers. AAL's DevX Autonomy Marketplace is accelerating the discovery and award of cutting-edge unmanned systems. We're also delivering capability through software. The Army Software Factory and 1st Cav enhanced ATAC to improve situational awareness, cutting SUAS launch times, and reducing mid-air collision risk. In support of JTF Southern Border, the Sentry tool reduced SecWar reporting from 8 hours to seconds. The Harding Project's Combat Chronicles unlocked 120,000 historical Army Journal articles, now fully searchable and discoverable. And Phoenix Med is now the primary operational health record in both Europe and the Pacific, with over 1,000 users, 40 active facilities, and 12,000 documented encounters. Using these as a benchmark, we'll know we're succeeding when the entire Army recognizes T2COM as a responsive and enabling teammate, one that operates as an integrated system, empowers leaders to solve adaptive problems, adjusts to the dynamic operational environment, fights to innovate, demonstrates discipline and initiative, and yields a lethal, ready, and professional Army. Transforming the Army is a team effort. Scientists, soldiers, industry partners, the entire industrial base, venture capitalists, and private investors, all working together toward a common purpose. This entire auditorium represents an integrated system and a powerful team. It was a team like this that delivered PRISM. 2 weeks ago, the chairman recognized the PRISM crew for its first ever use in combat. All of us should be very proud of them. This command also emphasizes that capability is not solely materiel. A different kind of team, NCOs, mentors, peers, and subordinates, yielded the inspirational leader that was Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, the professor of military science at Old Dominion University. And he, in turn, yielded capability in the form of ROTC cadets, future second lieutenants, who heroically acted and saved lives. At his memorial on Sunday, family members and mentors highlighted that those cadets did not find courage in the moment. Brandon already imparted it in ways that transcend qualitative measure through his presence, vision, and spirit. In closing, to transform an Army requires Army teammates to seek out and reward innovative ideas for solutions and experimentation at every level. Identify change agents. To industry partners, engage the PAEs and PIT directly. Solve critical warfighting gaps. Land force contributions matter. We see it every day. To everyone here, reach out to T2COM. Every node on our organization chart is available to take your call. Thanks to everyone who participated in General Dave Francis's T2COM education sessions. His effort has been critical in creating shared understanding and transparency. General Francis also communicated your questions to us. We hear you and appreciate your engagement. When people talk about the breadth of T2COM, I remind them that it's not about the enormity of the command. It's about connecting organizations, not only to produce something new and novel, but to enable victory. I also remind them that this new command must earn its reputation and offer a return on investment on the Army's big bet. To the soldiers, leaders, and formations we support, my teammates and I embrace this challenge. From vision to victory, this will defend.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our President and Chief Executive Officer, General Bob Braun, USA, retired.
Well, I told you that would be terrific. And before you take off, just a big thank you to Dave Hodney and his team. Just a tremendous job here integrating. And a thank you, really, no question about it, the best global force ever. You look at the metrics, the most registered, the most exhibitors, the best education programs. The Warrior Corner was unbelievable. The panels were great. And that doesn't happen without a whole lot of work. So thanks to General Mohan, Chris Mohan, just amazing job, AMC, and in particular your folks, Megan Merkwan and Lieutenant Colonel Gerald Robinson, for their tremendous support. They just did a great job. And to General Hodney, and a big thank you to them. The T2COM team, General Hodney, and then Sarsha Tyson and Lieutenant Colonel Mike McLean did a fantastic job. A special thanks to them. And a thanks also to the Honorable Mike Obadal, the Undersecretary of the Army, and his team for all their support. So as we close out Global Force 2026, I think you see the incredible power pulling together all these key folks And that's what AUSA does, educate, inform, and connect. And never has it been more important to connect industry, and never has there been a greater opportunity, as you just heard, to connect industry and get our soldiers those items they need. Number one, to deter anybody be stupid enough to attack us or try to cause us harm. And number two, if they do, if they are that stupid, okay, we can prevail and win. So thanks to all the industry out there that's working so hard, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Tremendous networking. And I will remind you, we still have about 45 minutes. The hall's still open if you didn't get a chance. It was packed yesterday, I know, but if you didn't get a chance, it's still open for 45 minutes. Get out there. And thanks again for your great support and Global Force. Have a great day.